everybody. I'm Talia Pardo. Welcome to Soul Speak. This is the first episode of season 2. I'm so excited. We've been doing this for a year, and I'm very happy to launch season 2. And today I have with me Jenna Faye Madden. She's the CEO of Soulmate Strategy, an incredible business coach and guru that works in embodied leadership and embodying your feminine energy and kind of combining your personal and spiritual growth with your business and allowing your personal growth to support that business growth. So she is also my business coach, and one of the reasons that I have invited her here today because I've so much enjoyed working with her for the last year and a half. I don't know if you've seen the last episode of season 1, but if you haven't, go check it out because that was the episode when I interviewed Jenna about everything that she does. And so, in a little twist, what we decided to do for season 2 is have Jenna come on and interview me because while I've spent the last 18 episodes interviewing others, I haven't had the opportunity to be interviewed myself. And maybe you don't know so much about me, or maybe you want to learn more. So I thought it would be a fun way to kick off season 2. So that's what we're doing today.
I am so excited for this. This is going to be incredibly fun and really potent to have this kind of role reversal episode. I know
Mm.
everybody listening is in for a treat because you have put so much love into creating this show. You also have so much of your own wisdom to infuse and share with everyone. So why don't we start there with what really led to, let's start here, the creation of the Soul Speak show. Like what inspired you and led you to creating this platform and this community in the first place?
So that's a great question. Thank you. And it's actually making me really go backwards in my mental file. So it's been a long time. I've spent several years finding my voice and being comfortable with speaking out. I was originally a very, very, very shy person. And in my previous career, I had to learn to be comfortable speaking in front of others. And I discovered that that's actually something that it lights up the energy inside me. It gets me really into flow. So I really enjoy that. And flash forward to my reinvention of myself as an editor and a life coach. I've been in touch with she's my cousin, but she's also an amazing woman, Galit Rosen Ventura. She started a TV streaming channel, an online streaming channel called Everyday Woman TV, and it's available on Roku and Apple TV and Google TV and have 17 different streaming apps. And she asked me if I'd be interested in doing a show. My fiance has told me for a long time that he thinks that I should do some kind of podcast. It's kind of been something that's been, brought up and prompted to me in different ways over the years, but this was an opportunity to do it concretely and have support. And so I thought, it would be fun. And so in light of my new connection, I guess, or purpose with healing and my own, self-identification with my journey. I thought it would be great to have coaches on. I love having conversations. I love the long form podcast style. I listen to a ton of podcasts also myself, and I love to talk to people. So I thought this would be a great way to create a platform, not only to showcase and bring others to the light and have them share what they do, but just a way for me to learn. Also, I learn from every guest that I have on, and I get to enjoy, it's a little bit selfish too. I get to enjoy a really great conversation. And it's fun and it feels good. So I took the dive and I've been enjoying it ever since.
I love it. Well, and you've had a really successful first season with a lot of incredible speakers. I know some of the speakers that you have lined up for season 2, and I feel like it just keeps getting better and better. And you get to go deeper and
Mm.
deeper into this journey where I think there are many people like you and me who love listening to chats. They love informal interviews, and it's such a great learning and activation medium for so many of us because it's something that's really kind of snackable. I find it's not so official as I know many of us
Yeah.
listening to this, we're in courses, we're in programs, and like that's one aspect, and there's so much value and benefit to that. But then I find in like the kind of day-to-day moments of our lives, when we're driving, when we're waiting for the
Yeah.
kids, when we're
Absolutely.
cleaning, like we're at the gym, doing these things, I find it's such a good opportunity to listen, whether on audio or even video, to different chats like this, because it kind of makes it feels intimate. It feels like we're a part of something.
Yeah.
You kind of feel like you're a part of a secret community of people who maybe aren't the same as us, but who are on the same wavelength, who are sharing similar values. And we also get to learn from these people as well. And I feel like that is where these shows and the show of Soul Speak, has its foundations in this kind of community driven energy that people can pick up and plug in really at any time in their day. And they get to go to, what topic resonates. They can watch it on their
That's right.
TV. Like there's so much flexibility there. So I really, just wanted to start off, I guess, this episode by really commending your pioneership,
Yeah.
to create this and to get people involved to be a part of this, which I guess leads me into my next thought and question for you, which is what you feel like your kind of overarching high level mission is. Like, tell us a little bit more about your work, your background, and the mission ultimately that you feel like you're really here to bring forth, to move forth while we're in this earth realm.
Well, it's a big question. Um, so, just a bit of my own past and history is growing up. I mean, we've all got, difficult stories and we've all had our own challenges in life. And one of my biggest challenges has always been myself, is dealing with myself, my emotions, the way I see the world. And I've always struggled with managing anger, managing sadness and anxiety. And I never felt like I had anyone to guide me. Like there was just no resource for it. I mean, within my family, no one was really aware. It had its own dysfunctions, so nobody really had tools for it. I went to therapists and through the years, but I guess also sometimes you come to things when you're ready. So, a lot of those years didn't help me so much. And so much of how I've healed has been finding, I guess, the right people at the right time with the message and the tools to help me reflect on myself. And that was, I guess, a big element of it. I needed to actually do the work on myself. It wasn't somebody, who could do it for me. I had to really learn to sit with myself, face myself. But even that language, there was a whole vocabulary that I wasn't familiar with that really made a difference. Sitting with yourself, observe your feelings, all of that kind of ego reflection, inner child work that was so foreign to me. And it was a journey of several years when I discovered my mentors that have had the biggest impact on me for like the last 8 years now. Jennifer Funk and Graham White, I will give them a shout out because I adore them. But they really started me on the path for my own healing journey. Um, and so when it comes to my purpose, I think I've come so far and I've changed so much as a person, and that we all still are always a work in progress. But it makes me want to be able to offer resources or offer that kind of support to others if they don't feel that they can find it elsewhere, right? Like to just be one more branch for someone to reach for, if they're struggling, and let them know that like it's okay to struggle with those big feelings and those big emotions and to be knocked down by your own self, right? And not know how to proceed, or, to want to find ways to make life better for you, and you're looking for how to do that. So that really has been the driving force behind my purpose. It was what made me want to become a life coach and get certified for it, and want to help people, just in support and showing them different ways and letting them know that like it's okay wherever you are in your life and however you're dealing with things. It's okay, but it can always get better, right? And you have it within you to do that. And so, the purpose behind Soul Speak is to be able to bring out coaches and leaders in this enormous personal growth and spiritual awakening. Like, I hate the word industry. It's not, it's a community, right? There are so many people who take so many different approaches. And I want to be able to bring them to more people, right? And give someone a chance to stumble on them or to find them through my show and go like, oh, I never knew this was possible. There, I've had people who talk about soul alignment or mindful living, or, I've had coaches like you who combine business in with their personal growth, or, Abby Knipe, we talked about womb healing. Like there's just so many different approaches to healing yourself, and we're so multifaceted. There sometimes need different healing approaches for one person. So my purpose is really to highlight that and bring that, give them another platform to stand on, for somebody to resonate with, and maybe also just not feel so alone, right? To know like, "Oh, I've also gone through awful things, and maybe there is something that I can do to help myself, and maybe it's this that I find in this episode."
Yeah,
So
I love that. I feel
that's
like, go ahead.
yeah. No, I was going to say that that's kind of my bigger purpose. What I've noticed has been interesting. So that was really like the first season, and what I'm moving into now for the second season, it's kind of following also my own growth and evolution, and learning to understand what feminine and masculine energies are, right? To learn how to embody that, and to integrate it with ourselves, and to help other people understand. Because I really feel like we're at a place in society where the masculine has taken a massive beating, right? There's just so much man hating out there. There's so much denigration and lack of appreciation and lack of space for men in this world.
Mhm.
And I feel that women and like our relationships would be so much better if we could understand them and learn to appreciate them. And then maybe they could also learn to understand us a little bit better too, like to just open the doors for greater understanding and communication. And so that's what I'm going to be focusing on for the next few episodes at the very least for season 2, is to bring on coaches who work with couples or who work with men or women, and talk about the divine masculine and feminine, and not that divine needs to be off-putting for anyone. It's really about our authentic selves, and who we really getting in touch with who we really are, and feeling comfortable in embodying it, right? And holding space for the other to be different, but you know, but lovable and appreciated. We can appreciate them.
I love it so much. Yeah, it feels like a really kind of integrative approach for people. And
Mhm.
this is such a important topic that I feel like is getting more buzz, but I also feel like it isn't necessarily always being discussed with like kind of the how. Like, how do you embody this? How do you
Mm,
apply this? And not just like, oh, it's important, but like, how do you actually apply it? And this is where I feel like you're really helping to be a bridge right now for people with a lot of this great information where they can actually assimilate and integrate that information. And I feel like this is where Soul Speak really does come into play. And I feel like the direction that you're taking the show as well is, it already was, but I feel like as you deepen on your journey as a host, it's
mhm,
becoming more and more of this like really integrative community space, because the
mhm,
energy and the community around it continues to build as well, which is really cool to see happening in real time. And I think that there's so many different leaders and people who are in all sorts of different walks of life that can be watching this, but I feel like there's a special draw for people who maybe are like stepping into leadership or are on a personal awakening journey, maybe even an entrepreneurship journey. I know it's like a wide scope of like who could really get value from this show. But I guess on the topic of
mhm,
entrepreneurship and leadership, I would love to hear just, I guess, a little bit of what brought you into the world of entrepreneurship, because I know it wasn't, you weren't always doing life coaching and even your own editing business and a lot of the cool things you do now. It wasn't always like that. So I think it would be really cool just to hear a bit of the journey that brought you
mhm.
into like full-time entrepreneurship where, Soul Speak gets to be a part of that.
Yeah, it really I never even considered owning my own business, running my own business. I was a children's librarian for like 20 years. I worked in a private elementary school for about 16 of those years, and I loved my job. I loved the kids. I really felt that I was touching young lives, right? That's really, it came down to getting that one kid to get excited about books and reading. That was really what lit me up. But through those years and towards the end of those years, also, I went through a divorce. I was a single mom. Like I went through my own personal trials that took a lot away from, I mean, I think my work having to go to work saved me in a way, but at the same time, it took away from my ability to do my work well, right? Like I just couldn't function well. And at the same time, I think I was changing as a person and was starting to need something a little more dynamic and had gotten very complacent there. I'll definitely acknowledge that. And I ended up at a different, it was, the universe started to work. The more I started to awaken the universe, I started to see how the universe was working for me. And I ended up back at like my childhood public library in Montreal as the director of the children's. And it was like a big homecoming. I mean, I'd grown up knowing everybody there. I had worked there as a student. So it really was this incredible circle, completion for me to come back as the director of the children's library. And it was really glorious for a while. And it opened up a creative side to me that I didn't anticipate that I didn't expect that I had because it took me what it did was it took me off the floor of the children's library. So it took me out of the practice of like one-on-one with the kids, and I became an administrator, which was very different. It was a lot of learning, it was a lot of administrative work, but it also called on me to be creative because all of a sudden I was also in charge of programming, and I had to bring in a community. Whereas in an elementary school, you have a captive audience because they have to come to library, but in the public library, you have to make them want to come in. So, that was fun, and I got really creative about it. And my kids were around the same age, the right age, so I would think about what they wanted and start to create programs that worked for them. And I ended up founding the Montreal's, like it's the only festival of its kind, and bless my successors because they've kept it going. It's called the Montreal Yeah Fest, and it was the first young adult festival. It was a full day festival. We got five of the big publishers to send us authors who were publishing books. Like we had some incredible names come in, and it was a full day festival of panels. And so it was aimed at teens. Although we ended up having writers and literary agents show up as well, and editors, and it really was an incredible accumulation of different people with interest in reading and books and supporting the book world. And so it was fun. We'd have lunch and music. Like it was really a wonderful event that I really enjoyed doing. But what it did was it really showed me also what I can do. Like it opened up all these new abilities that I never knew that I had, but I was suddenly thrust into having to do them because I am planning a festival. Well, this comes with it. It comes with going to meet publishers. It comes with, hosting, planning hotels and transportation for authors and all these different kinds of tasks that you need to do to put together a festival. And I discovered that like, oh, there's so much more to me than I ever anticipated. And then life had a real twist of fate, and I ended up leaving my job very abruptly. And I was kind of ready to because I was very, very stressed and I was struggling with fatigue, and other life issues. And then COVID hit, and I also broke my foot at the same time. So it was a year of the universe telling me it's time for you to sit down. Just sit down and stop. So in that year, I had two foot surgeries. I had shingles. I was basically bedridden for 2 months every 3 months of that year. And it was that was my real dark night of the soul because all of a sudden I had to reevaluate who I am. I'm not a librarian anymore because at that time with COVID, who knew when libraries were even going to reopen? So, and I was realizing that like my kids really needed me to be home. Whereas before I was working almost 6 days a week sometimes, and I just wasn't home for them. And so I started to think about what can I do differently, and how can I change my life? And it was at a time I think where a lot of people were thinking about how to change their lives, right? Or how to reset. And so that's how thinking of doing something on my own from home came to mind. It started with editing. I started with editing courses. I worked with a literary agency that I adored, and I did like I think almost 50 manuscripts in like 6 months. I had the greatest time editing young adult books and learning so much. And then I started to try to set out on this editing journey of becoming a freelance editor, which is not easy, especially not knowing anything about entrepreneurship either. I was kind of, flailing around in the dark, but also finding that editing was leaving me with something missing. Like I was still so immersed in my personal journey that um, I started to want to do more in that area. And that's what made me think about life coaching. And I found the Jay Shetty certification course. So I'm like, oh, I can do, and I'm learning that I'm ADD. So I always get the like, I can do it all. So I try to do it all. And I'm managing, came to this point where I think I've managed pretty well. I've gotten my certification for everything I need to do. And I'm attracting clients and working in editing and creating coaching courses and a coaching group, and that I'm really enjoying. And so, it's been, like I said, it's been a bit of a fly by the seat of my pants thing, but at the same time, it's opened my world. Like I feel like my brain is just opened up to things that never ever did I consider were for me, and yet at the same time feel so authentic and feel so right for me that it's like, oh, I finally found something, and I guess it makes sense when we grow through our lifetimes, right? What I did before was right for me then. I don't begrudge it and I don't regret it, but I'm a different person now, and I think that this is where I am now. It feels really good.
I love this. Yeah, it's like different seasons, different chapters that we move through. And also as our consciousness expands, I don't feel like everybody needs to walk the path of entrepreneurship,
Mm,
but I feel like for many of us, it's a very natural progression because we want to bring our gifts, we want to bring our skills to the world, we want flexibility. So there's more and more people who, especially since the COVID side of things began, who for
yeah.
various reasons had to reevaluate their life and their path and what they're doing. And this is where I feel you are such an inspiration for people because you did leave like a very different path in some ways to pursue this path. And as we all know, entrepreneurship is it's a total roller coaster of a lot of different things and emotions, and it's a healing journey really within itself because
Yes.
it forces us to look at our shadows and what's still there and what are our limiting beliefs. And I feel this is something that I respect so much about you is your ability to do the work, number one, but number two is to like bring people together through this kind of experience.
Mm,
Like you're such a great networker and connector, and I know we've talked about this a lot before, but this is why this show is such a natural progression, I feel, for who you are and what you do in the world, because you naturally connect and you naturally have all this wisdom to share. And I feel like this has rippled out into the community as well that you're growing with the wisdom well, which I think is worth us
yeah.
having a little chat about as well, of like that part and that branch of your business, because that to me is like really encapsulating what you really stand for and is
Mm.
such a great representation of your mission and the work that you do. So maybe could you tell us a little bit more about the Wisdom Well and what it's about, but also like what's your vision, because I know that you're continuing to refine and grow that community as well.
Yeah, it's that that was, definitely comes out of learning that I'm a good connector, which I really learned when I was creating the festival. And when
Yeah.
I, reach out to people to do the show, that's when I feel flow, is when I'm connecting. And there's just always great energy, for someone who's usually pretty introverted. These kinds of situations, I think, really tap into that social and extra, that little extrovert that's hiding over there, that's waiting to just be let out. Yeah, and the wisdom well came out of last, like at the beginning of last season with Soul Speak. There were a few conversations that I had where we were talking about feminine wisdom. It's been a big theme to me, I guess, in my life, that I've always felt like I was missing out on communication with other females. Like
Mm-hmm.
the women in my family, there wasn't so much of that kind of supportive wisdom that was shared in communication. And it made me think about, maybe it's a bit of a glorified image, but it is an image that we have of, ancient times when women really, and it's not even so ancient actually when I think about it, because I think about the life of like my great grandmother and the stories I
Yeah.
hear about her, where like women live their lives together. Women need community, they need each other. And they very often throughout the eons, have done it all together, right? In community, raising their children side by side, doing the chores that they need to do together, right? Like butter churning or laundry day, everybody collaborated and helped each other. And during those times, that is when I would imagine wisdom was shared, right, from between the generations and all the different age stages of our life. And I found that like coming to my stage of life at 45, and I look back and understand like so much of what my body has gone through, and also the life stages that I've gone through of, married, young mother, single mother, divorced, whatever, all of that, you know, having a community around you of other women who either have already gone through it or haven't and have shared experiences or advice or support to share is so crucial to who we are. And I think we're really lacking that these days, especially in the last few years where we're all just so isolated and we're at home. And, you're lucky if you've got a couple of best friends, who are genuine and really supportive. Um, that really stood out to me, and it became a part of a few conversations that made me realize like what's stopping me from starting something like that. And that's where the wisdom well was birthed, where my vision for it really is a support group where women of any age and all age can be there, can share in a safe and supportive environment, um, what they're going through, and have the benefit of sisters to hear them, to see them, to cheer them on, to support them in their darkest times as well, and just create a community with really strong bonds. I've started trying to also like not elevate, but maybe I think create more engagement and just it has encouraged me to take a leadership role as well. Like it's one thing to say I'm creating a group, here you go. It's another thing to realize, no, no, if I'm creating the group, I need to take a leadership and take the lead and lead by example. So I've instituted some like really fun events that we did this month. Was great. I have we do a monthly group coaching call on Zoom, so it's not even in the group, it's a more private experience where I do come in and talk about whatever you're going through, and I'll help you through it, and you'll have a group of women who will be there to witness and to listen and support. But other stuff too, in the spiritual side of things, I love to do oracle cards. So I do oracle card readings once a month just for our Wisdom Well members. And once a month, I do a transmission, just me talking about different healing modalities or different things that we may face. Last month, well, this month, it's still February, I talked about dealing with negative thought patterns, which are really hard to deal with sometimes. Like, how do you get yourself out of a negative spiral,
Mm-hmm.
and what to do about it? And to know that that's okay. We're all, sometimes subject to the thoughts in our minds, but to know we're not the thoughts in our mind. And one of the members, Ruth Shrieky, she's a holistic practitioner and she's a good friend of mine. She has volunteered to do with me once a month what we are calling Venus Fridays, where we talk more about, we're trying to tie it to a moon phase and herbs and essential oils and used in healing. So we did our first one this month too, and that was great. So, just different things to engage, and where I'm going to be coming up with different stuff all the time, and I'm always open to suggestions or questions. So I think, the goal is to create a dynamic community where there's action and engagement, and at the same time feels very supportive and transformative, hopefully as well.
I love it. Yeah. And I mean, I love getting to be inside of the community and already seeing the
Yeah.
growth, seeing the momentum, seeing the conversations that are budding in this kind of space. Cause I definitely believe and know that you're on to something when it comes to the importance of community, especially with women. And like you said, really spreading and sharing that wisdom amongst each other, because there has been a pretty big disconnect from that in our society. And I think it's really cool to bring it back and to just like really foster it, and like let it be something that grows. And I think sometimes in this industry, people kind of just assume that people have those kind of support networks when the reality is like it can actually be a very lonely path. And it's not even just entrepreneurship. I think even just like womanhood, I think even just awakening life, all of these things. And I think you do a good job of doing that. And I think something that I find just really interesting and great that you do is you're someone who I feel is a really highly conscious individual. I feel like you have a really good handle on what's going on in our world right now in like a spiritual and literal sense. And I feel that you're a really good bridge in that sense because you're not someone who, in my observation, is like yelling from the rooftops for people to have to see things or awaken or do things in a certain way. But I feel like you're kind of like the loving disruption for people where when those communities and stuff are like really being cultivated, it creates just naturally safe conversations and spaces, and it can come up in coaching. And I do feel like that is something that you're really strong at, is bringing the consciousness into things, and not from like a marketing aspect, but just a human aspect, because everybody is receiving upgrades and initiations right now. It's pretty much inevitable with everything changing in our world. So I feel like that's just really cool to see, just like the subtle blending and infusion of that. And even just things like, you're kind of a pioneer, like you're out there on like different platforms. These are going out on Rumble, like these are available on alternative platforms at a time where censorship and change is really at an all-time high. So I think that even deserves just like a little bit of expansion from you, if you're open to sharing just a little bit of your perspective of like, where do you see things like that heading at this point? Like, what are your thoughts? What are your beliefs? What's your intuition telling you when it comes to like alternative networks and community? And like, why does that matter right now out of all the
Mm.
time on planet Earth with everything going on right now?
I so appreciate you bringing that up because, in our personal growth world, it's very easy to not address it at all and just pretend everything is just la la la, happy woo woo. And I come from being in a place where it stopped being healthy for me. I used to shout it from the rooftops. And, anyone who knew me before, that was the only thing I could talk about, what was going on in the world, politics, current events. And I felt very passionate about it. And what I learned is that it was really channeling so much negative energy through me and so much anxiety. And it was not allowing me to see the brighter side of life or the beauty of life, and it was really stymieing my own growth. So I had to make a choice to refrain because I understand that, you know, I'm not saying that one voice doesn't make a difference, but what I'm saying is the people that I was yelling at were yelling the same thing back at me, right? Like we were in our own echo chamber. And so I wasn't convincing anyone of anything. And the people who weren't yelling it back at me or, weren't of the same mindset, I was not going to get through to anyways. Like I feel that the population has become very divided, very set in the realities that they see. And so me standing up and screaming about it is only going to make me a target. And not that I'm afraid of speaking my mind, but my energy is so much better used to be channeled in a more positive way. And I love that you brought up Rumble because I love Rumble. I love that there are alternative networks being put out there. I mean, I'm a big supporter of Dave Rubin. He's created the locals community, which I am on, but I'm having, it's so hard to get rolling on it. So if anybody out there is on local, come find me. It's Phoenix Rising Mentoring Community because I'd really like to develop my community there as well because I feel very strongly that, our voice and our speech is really being trampled on, not just hindered, right? Where it's being actively stopped and silenced. And so one of the main answers, the way that we're dealing with what's going on in the world and the tyranny that is being put in place around us everywhere is to create systems of our own, that they can't infiltrate into, that they can't step on. And the only way to do that is for us to support it and to be active in it, and so I do post this on YouTube and on Everyday Woman TV, but I also post it on Rumble because I want to make sure that I support a platform that believes in free speech and is determined to be, to not be touched by what's going on in this new world that we're waking up to. And I think that really is the way we have to actively support organizations and it's like programs that come up that support freedom and liberty and maintaining of our personal rights. And we have to step away from those organizations that don't anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
I so agree. And I feel like right now we're just in a very transitional time, and where we spend our money like impacts things, where we spend our time impacts things, where what kind of platforms we spend our time on. And I mean, I'm on all the big ones, big tech still, and I feel like a lot of people are still grasping at them, but we're starting to see this transition to other alternative networks. And so right now, I feel like a lot of us have like one foot in each, kind of
Yeah.
toggling between, because a lot of people haven't yet left those things.
Yeah.
So we still want to be like plugged in and be able to network, but also it's also kind of being that pioneer of being involved in these other networks, these other platforms, these communities, because people are starting to migrate more and more. So I really love that you're making this available to people
Yeah.
in alternative ways. I think that's so important. And something that I thought would be kind of fun for today is like a quick kind of like rapid fire for us
Okay.
we wrap
Sure.
up before we wrap up this season 2 episode 1 together. So okay, rapid fire number 1, what would you say if you could recommend one book? What would
Oh
that be? Because I know you're
my
all
God,
about the
that's too
book.
hard.
So
Dune by Frank Herbert. That's my all-time favorite book.
why? Tell us why.
Oh, he was a visionary. It's a sci-fi novel, but if you read it carefully, he has an intense and very deep understanding of human nature. And so he basically has projected the evolution of the human race 10,000 years in the future, which includes the evolution of politics and political science and religion, and what is a human. Those questions and those concepts are really, he gets the nature of humanity, and you can see a trajectory, and he saw it and he developed it. What would things be, what could the human race devolve or evolve into in 10,000 years? And he just created an incredible world. And I've read the series probably about 5 or 6 times, and I'm still
Wow.
learning from it every time I read. Like, I'm still kind of going, oh my God, how did he see this? Like, how does tyranny develop? What happens to a human being when you give them power? There's just so many incredible, very deep philosophical questions in there.
Okay,
So
cool. Yeah,
Dune, I
it's
recommend.
getting
Yeah.
added to my list then. Okay, so that's one. The next question for you is on the topic of soul speak. What would be your
Mm.
top piece of advice that comes to mind for someone listening who really wants to express their soul a little bit more? What would be your top piece of advice for them if they feel like they haven't really been speaking their truth or speaking from their soul up until now and they really want to lean into that?
Just start practicing. Find the medium that works for you, whether it's video or audio, podcasting, or writing. And even just start doing it for yourself, like record yourself talking, and without the intention of posting it, right? Like, that's kind of the concept of journaling, is just practice speaking your mind without censoring yourself and without worrying what other people are thinking, and then slowly graduate to putting it out there. And if you're not, it's not about, and if it's not for you about putting it to a public audience, then just practice saying things to people around you, and begin with people you can trust, that to share your views with, and start from there, and see, brace yourself for reaction sometimes, but learn also the resilience that, what you say is important, and how people react is secondary.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's potent advice. Okay, my
Yeah.
last question for you today about all of my rapid fire anyways is with we'll call the great awakening that's going on right now. All of these changes on earth, people are leaving jobs, like all sorts of things are going on. For anyone that's feeling kind of uncertain about where things are headed, and I know that none of us has a crystal ball with the exact future truth. There's lots of timelines available, but what would
Mhm.
you say would be your top nugget or piece of advice for people that are just feeling a bit uneasy right now, feeling uncertain with what is going on and they feel confused or maybe frustrated? Because I know you've been on a big journey around that yourself. What would be the top thing you could share with anyone listening who's feeling a little scared or frustrated or confused with everything that's going on, changes in our world wise?
I would say focus inwards. And it's not about, ignoring what's going on in the world. I also am very aware of what's going on, but focus on the most important things in your life that are closest to you now. Because if everybody took the time to make sure that their own lives were fulfilled and had meaning, and that their loved ones knew, felt that love, and that they conducted themselves in the most authentic way that they could, I think I feel like that would create an energy wave, that might not stop bad things from happening in this world, but might give us the resilience and the resources to survive them, right? To just know that you will survive, resolve to survive it. And the way that we do that is by making sure we're good here in our houses, ourselves, in our hearts. Practically speaking, preparedness, I'm all for it. But also just for how we live our lives and who we associate with and what we do with our day. I think that's the best way also to just counteract that anxiety, is to focus on making your immediate space good.
I would absolutely agree with that. I feel like sometimes we get so focused on the external, but I really feel like a
Mm,
lot of this comes down to like what's going on within the four walls of our home, what's going on within our own mind, our own body, and then we can lead and project outwards into the external world from there. But a lot of us, not that it has to be an either or, but I feel like a lot of us have a lot more inner work to do to really like regulate ourselves to feel
yeah.
more safe and resilient right now before we need to say focus on yelling at people on the internet, which I think a lot of us have learned, like you and I, is like not the most effective use of our time and doesn't really work that well anyways. And I feel like just being that light in the world and, make eye contact with people, smile at people, be a nice human. And that really goes along a really long way. Like the other day, we had an older man, maybe in his 70s, come up to me, my husband, in our little rural area that we live, and he must have saw us and thought we were some youngins because his phone, it was synced up to his Bluetooth in his truck, and every time he would turn it on, he couldn't listen to the AM radio because his Bluetooth was on. And it just made
Right.
his day that I hopped into his truck and I figured it out
Oh,
and I disconnected the Bluetooth and fixed it, and his AM radio was working, and he was just so pleased. And then he was so happy to just tell us about his life and talk about where he lived and welcome us to living in the area. And those things I feel like are underrated, how far that
mm,
can really go, like in terms of the collective of just raising the frequency and really impacting people. And that feels a lot better personally for me than when I was like angrily like judging people who were masking and stuff at the grocery stores, raging, and no judge against anyone, in personal preference and choice listening to this, but it was like the anger and the rage I was carrying, like wasn't really helping me, wasn't really changing anybody's mind. So really just coming from that place of love, I feel like is some of the best things that we can do, and really focus on ourselves first and foremost of who are we being in the world. So I
yeah,
think you're such a good
right.
case study of that, an example
Thank
and
you.
inspiration.
Yeah, well, I mean, what you just said, those two examples, it's just like either both of you can walk away feeling really good and let that ripple out into like you not picking on your husband after you're walking away, instead might be more loving, right? Like as opposed to having a bad argument, yelling at somebody for something stupid in the a stranger even that has nothing to do with you, and you both walk away feeling bad and you both end up yelling at somebody else or, treating somebody else badly. And it's just this ripple effect of
Yeah,
negative energy. And not only that, how we internalize that, like what it does to our brain chemistry and our internal system. It's either we're augmenting fear and anxiety and stimulating cortisol and all those awful hormones that make us sick and, promoting an inflammation in our systems, or, we're releasing the oxytocin and then, all the endorphins and the serotonin and all those good feel good hormones in our body. And our body does better, that way. So it's internal and external, I think. And that's the core of it all, right? That's where it needs to start. So I totally agree with you. And it's
totally.
such a nice story too about
Yeah, it was
that's
fun in a way.
kids.
I saw him this morning driving by
Yeah.
the coffee shop. I'm like, oh, there's Dawn, like. So yeah, it's really good when we can do these things, and really, I think a lot of this does come back to community as well, whether it's in the digital sense or the local sense, but just being involved in community in whatever way is nourishing to us, that we can bring our gifts and service to humanity. So I'm so honored that you get to do this with Soul Speak, and that I get to be a part of it and have this chat
Thank you
with you
so
today. And I'm sure this is all going to be linked below, but maybe you can just
much.
let everybody know, as you would always ask for your guests, where can people follow you and all the good stuff, if there's anything you can share with us of how people can connect with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, you can find me on Facebook and on Instagram under Talia Pardo Phoenix Rising. I've got the YouTube and Rumble channels, Phoenix Rising Mentoring, and on Spotify. So you can find Soul Speak on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. And my website is phoenixrisingmentoring.com. And for all my editing work, it's also all on the website, and you can access it also through phoenixrisingpublishing.com. And that's, more of an eye to down the road this year of trying to build a publishing company. So we've got so much more in the works. It's going to be great. But yes, please reach out if you're interested in working with me in any way. And Jenna, please like tell the audience how they can reach you too. All and everything, yes, will be listed in the notes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And for me, my brand is Soulmate Strategy. So pretty much if you look up Soulmate Strategy on any platform, I'm gonna be there. So TikTok, Instagram is Soulmate Strategy, Facebook is my name. So Jenna Faye Madden, and my website is soulmatestrategy.com, which has all the different ways to work with me, has my awesome free quiz for any women who
Mm,
want to learn their business magic archetype, which to me is basically how to find your personalized potion for really having a successful, sold out, sought out business in your magic and in your gifts. So if you want to take the quiz, you can take that on my website. And yeah, just connect. I love connecting. I have lots of different community spaces as well for female entrepreneurs, and would love to connect and have you be a part of it if you're listening to this and you resonate. So thank you, Talia, for having me here back on the show with you and letting me have the opportunity to interview you today.
thank you so much for giving your time to do this, Jenna. I love talking to you anyway. So this was just a fun, another fun time that I get to talk with you, and I really appreciate you doing this for me to help everybody get to know me a little bit, which was fun. And I do recommend everybody take the quiz because I took it and it was fun and so in tune and so accurate. So I really felt very validated.
Thank you.
Which was great. And yeah, I think we're good. And for I'm going to be starting the book list again for season two, you can get the season one book list on my website for all the guest recommended book lists. But I think I'll put Dune as today's
Yeah, that's going
recommended
to
book.
make the list for season two.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Okay,
right.
thank
So
you
that'll be
so
this
much
too.
for having me.
Thank you for doing this today. Thank you for being here. And thank you
Yay.
everybody for listening and watching.
Bye.